All right, so this is episode 6 of Pure Purpose program, and today we're discussing the topic of synaptic humanity.
Big
And
topic.
thanks, Dee, for joining us. Every topic we discuss is a huge topic. It's like a book. A book can be written about each one of them, but the idea behind this program is to just explore it as a conversation and dig out some inferred or derived information from it and really learn through discussion and through exploring our own minds. So I made some notes as a diligent human being that I am. I made some notes 5 minutes before I started. So just to kind of on myself into this topic. So I came across this topic of synaptic humanity, and I think this is how it was described. I googled it up, and nothing came up. So maybe I kind of missed it as a term, but let's just go with it anyway, and we can reword it and rephrase it when we write it up. The idea behind these episodes is to kind of draft up what would be a book about consciousness and purpose. So we're discussing this, and then later on we can draw from it anything that is of value and write it up in a more formal sense. So the notes that I made go something like this. So basically, as our consciousness rises as within us as individuals, the situation is arising where each human is like a nerve ending in a giant nervous system of humanity. And as our consciousness rises, we become more and more mentally connected. This in turn then creates a humanity-wide nervous system of enlightenment, let's say. So imagine if millions of highly conscious people were strongly connected together, what would happen? In many respects, we are being connected already more and more through Google Hangouts, Snapchat, Facebook, email since 20 plus years ago, internet, blogging, all these kind of things. All these things are connecting us, telephone, etc. And as the technology becomes more and more advanced, we can literally start becoming synaptically connected, literally mind-to-mind communication. And so imagine if millions of people are consciously connected strongly. What about a billion people, billion wise people synaptically connected together? What happens then? So technology has been steadily working towards enabling this to happen, and it continues to give us these superhuman powers. Superpowers. So how do we then derive new information and extract new knowledge and wisdom? In fact, there's nothing new, it's just new realizations, which is our real eyes looking at reality and observing the existence. And also, the other thing that came to my mind is that we've continuously observed this going from company to company, that companies have really lost any sense of a mission or purpose. Most companies have lost that. And have a mission, even a badly worded one or badly phrased one, seem to be doing much better than companies that don't have it, that are just working on stuff or creating products and services. So what has become apparent to me is that there's a lot more people, like people at this kind of integral level of consciousness, who have got their own personal missions. And the question is, how do our missions blend together? Because let's say we're working on coaching 1 billion people design thinking, the next guy's working on changing the world or fixing the world or improving the world. the next person is working on this and that and so on. How do our missions really blend together to create humanity where everyone's happy and joyful? And so then the question goes further to what kind of systems will enable us to leverage this extreme connectedness to create new, much more progressive advancement. That's what I jotted down so far. What comes to your mind off of that?
So similar to you, I had to jot down notes as well because I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. But I think everything really comes back down to us now figuring out ways how to have this cognitive collaboration with people from, everywhere in the world, right? So I spent probably like half an hour looking up, like, what is synaptic humanity? And funny enough, Pure Purpose Show episode number 6 popped up on the first page of Google search as of like an hour ago. So that was really cool. And I even had to look up like synaptic, the word, if I have to be very honest. I'm like, okay, so it's relating to nerve cells, short and simple, right? So I'm like, okay, nerve, and then I have to think of biology, right? And so if I'm thinking of biology, and then it's like I'm thinking of it's like biology and evolution combining, right? And so I remember in my freshman year of college, high school. My freshman year of high school, we were sitting in Mrs. Darby's class, and she had introduced us to Darwinism. And so she made us read this book, right, from Charles Darwin, and it was called On the Origin Species of 1859. And so it's like, it's how evolution is this unifying theory of biology, right? And so I was like, well, I don't understand why we're in biology class and learning about and having to learn about Darwinism, right? Or about Charles Darwin. And so it's really just like this, like our biological traits and our consciousness. It's not even studied, right, in the context of evolution. So it's like, okay, so where does consciousness come from? And so those theories, it's come from like religion or philosophy, but not so much in like the evolution biology, right? So now, and I'm like, I know I'm jumping all over the place because my notes are just very like, and if I'm thinking of evolution, so it goes from being triggered from Teddy Roosevelt's quote of do what you can with what you have, right? And so, and if anything, evolution really is the master of that opportunity. And so, my question is, right, is if we're dating it back from, if we're talking about the non-modern humans. So if we have evolved, can animals evolve? Do animals have that self-awareness, right? Or is it something that we've had to practice? Like, it's almost like if a dog sees another dog, is that dog thinking, I wonder if that dog sees me? Maybe I'll like hide here in this corner and then pop back out and then hide here again. And then it's like, all right. And then he sees all of these other dogs in the neighborhood and they're like, oh my gosh, here we are all together. Now we can just play with one another in this really big open space. So, yeah, and so it's just like, it's really interesting to see the evolution of like our central brain and like our nervous system and seeing how we can bridge that all together to, again, going back to the ultimate, what you call synaptic humanity of like this cognitive collaboration with one another. Again, going all over the place.
So in Star Trek, there is a famous thing.
Star Trek, oh my gosh, I've never seen a single episode.
In Star Trek, there's a thing called Borg, which is a centrally operated brain that then connects into the basically bodies of these cyborgs that are whose consciousness is effectively governed by the central Borg
Mm-hmm.
brain, and and then um, that's just like kind of like many bodies connected to the same brain and kind of slaved into serving a purpose of the central brain. With synaptic humanity, the idea is to for each person in the mega brain, humanity brain, to have its own consciousness and its own understanding of the nature of existence. And then the question is, again, it goes back to, if, let's say, if we want to coach 1 billion people design thinking, the idea there is to say, well, the way that happens isn't through me, myself, being the top guy, sitting on top and doing the Borg thing. The idea is to disperse this and make it a distributed system, a bit like blockchain, Bitcoin, all that stuff, so they can never be destroyed. Even if you destroy one of the kind of areas of it, the kind of the wisdom and preserved completely elsewhere in another part of the planet. And maybe even through destroying a bit of it, you get even better creation happening elsewhere. This is how the internet has managed to prevail, develop, sustain itself, and grow, because anybody can just plug in another bit of equipment and connect to the World Wide Web, and it just stays up. So with synaptic humanity, like each human is like a computer node, but being able to operate on its own, but then it gains much more power as it's connected together. But that requires, in many respects, us to both relinquish power and control, but also empower ourselves to add value into that big humanity network. And so it goes back to just the basic principles of, like, why do businesses exist, or why should businesses exist in society, in the world? They exist to serve a purpose, right? So if a business is there to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and usable, like Google does, then that's the purpose it should be serving. Uh, and so um, the next business ought to have a mission that doesn't necessarily look to do that, or if it's doing that, it should be doing it in significantly different ways, so that people can choose which way of organizing world's information and making it universally accessible and usable is what they prefer. So then I'm just thinking about this kind of stack of missions of companies and people, which are complementary to each other, so that as humanity in a global sense, we can be achieving what seem like audacious goals and missions to, put humans on Mars or whatever. But if everyone was working towards that in their own way, this would be much, much more achievable, quicker, cheaper, with less quarreling, etc., etc. Um, so that's the kind of thing there. It's just that in terms of evolution, now we're getting, as humans, we're getting to a point where technology is becoming. Now we've got wearables at the moment with Apple Watch and Fitbits and all that kind of stuff. The next phase is implantables. So talking about neural lace, where the issue is that at the moment, typing into the phone, as a text message, I can only do like 100 characters a minute or whatever, and that's very narrow input. If I had some sort of neural lace across my brain, I would be able to just kind of think at the speed of thought and just kind of input all this in real time. Even this kind of conversation, laying this information down in verbal way is very slow and tedious, and we don't really know what we're thinking, or we kind of know what we're thinking, but we can't connect that with our tongue because the skill set isn't good enough to connect our thoughts with our tongue, with our mouth. And so there are all these kind of barriers to communication effectively. Then the whole thing of around feeling comes into play. Feelings, what do I feel like? Can you empathize? Can you really understand what I'm feeling right now?
Mhm.
Why don't you understand what I'm feeling? Why does it even matter what I'm feeling? And what is the group feeling? So imagine if you're like in a party, garden party with a bunch of 20 people, what is the group feeling versus what are individuals feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about experience is the product, and experience is a lot about emotions. But yesterday I was talking to Chris, who might jump on in 10 minutes
Sure.
because he's saying he's walking back from a gym.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about emotions, and he says like emotion is just a part of intelligence, which effectively is derived from logical reasoning. So if we're logical enough to reason through things, and we go like, oh well, the chances of that happening are very low. Let's say if I'm scared of a tree falling over my head, I could be like really fearful about that. But logical reasoning tells me that because that tree has been up for 20, 30 years, it's very unlikely to fall on my head right now. So I shouldn't be fearful about it. Therefore, when I know something is unlikely to happen, I can relax and be calm. If I don't know, then chances are my emotions will be amped up really high and I won't be able to control them easily. So like emotional intelligence, according to him, is like a direct result of logical inferences being done in the human head. So what do you think would happen if 1 billion enlightened humans were working together on this planet?
If you said if IT, say that question again.
No, if billion enlightened humans were working together on this planet, what would
There,
happen?
we'd be living in a completely different world and space that is so beautiful, and we this is something that we are all aiming towards, right? And so even when psychologists, when they study like social cognition, they typically focus on something called the theory of mind, and then it's now like tapping a little bit into empathy. So it's really that ability to understand, right, the contents, the context, the thoughts of someone else's mind, right? And so I know this is one thing that you and I like to use when we're describing things. It's like we can oftentimes understand other people, right, by projecting ourselves onto them, right? But at the same time, we can also understand ourselves really just by considering the way that people will see us, like putting ourselves in their shoes and looking at ourselves from an outside perspective, right? So it's like the information or the data in my own personal mental lab, right? Um, it could like suggest that these networks in our brain is allowing us to really like distribute, right, consciousness to other people, so that it can overlap, or we can teach them, or with us coach them extensively, that really constructs like our own sense of consciousness. So imagine if there were a lot of these people, there was a lot of us that was really putting that into practice, and then it's just this really big snowball effect. I think there's just so many beautiful things that we can do. And even just like with your conversation with Chris yesterday, right, is that there's a lot of people that don't want to put in that work, that don't want to put in the work of wanting to evolve and develop and to grow. So I think it's our role and our mission and our calling to really be able to bridge all of these people together and let them recognize just the endless amount of possibilities that can come from all of this, of us being able to all be enlightened, whether that takes a couple of days, weeks, months, years, right? Whatever that is. And just to, if each person were to contribute in their enlightened state, then there's just so much we could do. I mean, imagine a world if we had 1,000,000 Elon Musk. Seriously, it'd be so different, right? Rather than just him. And so,
So
you know,
I think it goes back then to what is the mission of the humanity as a whole, right?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
who decides in this? Who decides in this? And really, how do we even know? Even if we're like a bunch of enlightened people,
Mm-hmm.
how do we really truly know that this ought to be our mission? Because a lot of people say, well, our mission is to evolve, right? So going back to evolution, is like our mission is to evolve. Evolve into what? Evolve into orbs. You know, we can evolve into orbs that are like clouds and have this kind of enlightened omnipotent wisdom, and then we just exist and live as clouds around the earth. We don't even need bodies as such. And then what? And then it's like the question is, what do the orbs do then? What is their purpose? What is their mission? And or if we're staying in our bodies and we're just getting this kind of superpowers from technology, and we can, let's say, go from London to Japan in a millisecond, at which point, you know, the way Alan Watts describes that, at which point going to Japan is no longer fun or aspirational, because you can just go there in a millisecond, just like, you know, because I can go just outside the house to this little piece of the lawn here, it's like, it's not fun. I'm always just thinking and wondering about being in Chichen Itza in Mexico, or in like Luxor in Egypt, because it's far. The further away it is, the more interesting it seems. But as the distance comes closer, we just go like, well, what's the big deal? It's just there. I can have it any point in time. Therefore, it's no longer interesting. It's no longer aspirational. It's no longer something that I want to strive towards, because I already have it. So once people have stuff, they typically start taking it for granted. Reason being, because they have it. It's like, I have this. I don't expect this to leave me. So if we were to have everything and be even able to achieve everything, what the hell would we want then? And does that mean that it's an opposite Chris is joining us. Hey Chris, how you doing? So we're just talking about the idea. We're talking about idea. What if billion people around this planet were enlightened and synaptically, cognitively, with their minds connected together, and they were able to have everything they want instantly, and do anything they want instantly as a kind of unit, humanity unit, what would the world look like at that point, and what would be our purpose and global collective mission on this planet? And who decides?
I've thought about this quite a lot, actually. I've thought about it as something
Good.
that could be a potential outcome. But interestingly, the barriers I came to with that is, number one, for what purpose? Yes, I can understand this unification of consciousness, where we would be all on this frequency through either that be an electronic network, a digitally assisted network, or is this what's part of the terms of singularity, that is to say, transhumanism, fusing consciousness with robotics? Because I think that is actually the only way you can facilitate such a communication in the sense that we're talking about. It's going to have to be through some sort of Skynet system, isn't it? And of course, the biggest failing of what we are as a condition is that we're still human. Being human is very fragile. It's very slow. We have to eat, we have to sleep. It's all very inconvenient. So we're actually a very delicate form. So the actual human body won't be enough in terms of power output to fuel a brain or consciousness that is going to be so evolved from what we are now. As it stands, we're already reduced the size of our digestive system, of our body. It's all been reduced down and down again in order to facilitate the brain's growth to what it is now. So essentially, it looks as if the mind, the brain, headed in its current trajectory, would have to leave the human body, and it would have to be elsewhere. But then, interestingly, that does work in the sense that we are so inefficient that we are a constant drain to the planet. So providing we don't meet with extinction within such a time, which I think we're overdue by 1 million years, if you look at the averages of all the other extinctions that have happened since the beginning of recorded time. It's catalogued time, rather, not recorded. So providing it's not natural disaster, it's not a self-inflicted extinction, it would be something along that networked sense, isn't it? But then I think about, okay, so if we've got this fantastic open network of communications, what are those communications happening? It would then have to be as if in symbiosis with the planet itself. The planet, we would have to not just fuse together, but the actual planet itself, maybe within the galaxy, there would have to be some specific purpose beneficial to that order. So whilst we can reach the ceiling of any new paradigm we aspire to reach to, what is the end goal of that, and who is that serving? Because naturally we are self-serving. That's the idea of life, isn't it? You take what you need and you survive and you continue the species. But it's almost as if now we've upgraded and upgraded. We now have to downgrade being human and upload ourselves into this machine, which in a way seems to have no real purpose, does it? What would the machine do? Why would it be there? Yeah, it'd be a cool idea, maybe. It could continue something, but in terms of biological life, it doesn't. Biological life would be disbanded, whilst the rest of biological systems within our ecosystem, within the biospheres, would still, by then, would still be alive. So I don't know. I think, well, still heading down the human extinction route, aren't we? Because we're saying, okay, well, let's not be human anymore. So we'll get rid of ourselves, but we're telling ourselves we're somehow making it better for ourselves, when actually we're still wiping ourselves out, aren't we, one way or another? It would do the planet a huge favor, us not being here, for sure. But in terms of our desires and our wants, it's like the self-actualization of that, the human purpose, our minds, it's all been from the having somewhere to go to, isn't it? Where's the end goal? What are we trying to achieve? Well, kinetically, we've always had something to achieve. The picking something up, putting it down, building something. If we are just a neural network, synaptically connected, as you suggest, then yes, we can become an information exchange, but still one within the bounds of obsolescence, because it would serve no real purpose other than just to exist itself. Yes, it may use less resources, but again, the whole idea of us being here right now like this is the fact that we have enjoyment. We have, again, it comes down to the personality thing. I like to do this. I like to do that. I find happiness in this. So I see now that we seem to be actually farming off and cutting ourselves away from these things, these basic human needs of happiness and desire. We seem to be cutting those away and saying, let's just become a machine. Well, okay, we can do that if you want, but we'll do that, and that's where we no longer would be humanity. So it's then, do we want to protect and evolve humanity as what it is and what it could be down a different route, or do we want to just go super exponential again with technological changes for no real reason other than the fact that because we can, and because our minds may be able to facilitate that, we should just do it anyway? I keep pointing this out about progress. What does progress actually look like? Who's got autonomy on progress? It is the free market, isn't it? Silicon Valley makes stuff. We all have to live with it. But when we have a vote on everything, don't we? We vote on policy. We vote on leaders, or supposed leaders. But when does anyone actually say, hold on, do we want robots? Do we want it to look like this? Because I don't remember asking for that. I don't remember asking to not have this and have that. So we are suffering our own intelligence, aren't we? On our own abilities. Do you not think?
Yeah, so has anybody seen a film called Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams?
Mm-hmm.
Many years ago, and I can't remember it enough.
I think it's worth rewatching that, because I kind of like rewatched it a couple of times, and effectively what ends up happening is that this robot that the humans have brought in as a kind of helper and clean and serve them ends up becoming so consciously aware and able to redesign itself, etc., that all the robot ever wants to be able to do is to do art like humans and feel and fall in love like humans do. And eventually that robot gains the rights, human rights, literally, to be recognized as a human and have the rights to get married to another human and sort of die as a human, right? And that's what ends up happening. So it's like humans are striving to be more like machines and have these machine superpowers, whereas machines are striving to be more like humans and have all these kind of love and emotional and artistic abilities. And so that singularity point in the middle where this all kind of blends together means that, okay, so we can be flying around like machines and have all this kind of like infinite capability of transmitting and realizing things in like real time, but also feel and create like humans do and be unique and quirky and weird and wonderful. And then the question is, what then? There's always question, what then? What now? What next? What is the progress? And really, we can't imagine that. So that whole thing of like leadership and even design becomes a paradox, because nobody ultimately knows what the fuck they're leading anybody towards, because even tomorrow is effectively unpredictable to such an extent that, even I can't tell whether the trains are going to be running tomorrow. They should be, but I don't know, right? I just don't know. And all sorts of unknown things can happen. And that idea of the unknown, the realm of the unknown is always like million times bigger than our realm of known. And so we're always making our decisions based on our known things about the unknown, and we don't even know what we don't know. Uh, so
Mm.
so um, so this is the hugest and biggest paradox in it all. And even as coaches, we tend to give people advice based on our sort of insights as to where this human is at, making a whole bunch of assumptions typically as to who they are, where they want to be, what's going on in their life. We give them advice, we tell them what to do, or we even get them to tell themselves what to do. And we think that's the right thing, but actually we just don't know. Ultimately, we don't know. And so the wise people, like, the Sadhguru and all these people, they just say, they embrace this concept of I don't know. And that's where the real opportunity lies, in the unknown, and being able to sort of drop all these things that you've learned and experienced, and all these things are kind of just like the baggage that you've collected, even the beautiful experience. So you just kind of tap into that state of blissful nothingness, and at that point you really tap into the true realizations. Realize being the word made out of real eyes. You really start seeing what's going on, because really when you close your eyes you see more than when your eyes are open. My personal experience being just last night, I typically don't dream, I don't do drugs, alcohol, or anything like that. But last night I had a dream in which I smoked some sort of LSD cigarette, and I was hallucinating within my dream, and having all these weird and wonderful trips without any side effects on my body, right? So I woke up and I was like, wow, I just had like a whole bunch of hallucinations for free, right? And so what am I saying in all this, Chris?
The mind, I still maintain, is we're suffering from an illness, a mutation. The brain is rampant. It's continually going on and on and on, and it just doesn't know what to do now. It doesn't know what to do. The more we achieve, the worse off we are. And there's this thing called village theory, where towards the end of village theory, it tells you about how the more experiences you have, the more you think about, the more you learn, the more you know, you will find yourself in a situation you can do. You are completely frozen because you've experienced everything, you felt everything. Now what? Now what? So it's a big consequence of what we are. And we have such deep thought, deep conversation this side of the world. And when we talk about this big grand future we could head towards, even if we look at how we're living right now, or how we'll live next year, the next 10 years, we have to remember that we've still got a large majority of our same species, our same kind, living elsewhere in the world, who are about 1,000 years behind us in intellectual parity. So these people who are still living in these small villages, these people who are disconnected, the people who we seem to think are behind, who actually aren't really behind, they are still living within the same 24 hours that we are, and they're a lot happier than we are. But intelligence is burdensome. And we are straining ourselves because we cannot do what we can't think of, and we are desperate to do something, but we don't know what. And if we do know what, we then say, why am I doing this? And this seems to come up more and more the smarter we get, or supposedly the smarter we get. So this whole thing of stepping back, taking one step back, is probably the most suitable thing we can really do. Why the rush? Why are we this desperation for growth, this desperation for innovation? What's the hurry? because the sooner we do it, the sooner we're in the shit again. You know, that's why it's so important to be happy in what you do, isn't it? And there really is nothing to race after at all. You know, I think all of our parents said that to us, didn't they? When they said, you know, what's the hurry? What's the rush? Slow down a little in life. Well, that as much as they don't really perhaps appreciate why that's so important, it's just they probably say it because their parents said it. But it is very important, isn't it? Because what are we so desperate to achieve here? We're alive and we're happy. Again, it's all this circle, isn't it? It's again back to the point of, are you happy and am I happy doing what I'm doing? If the
So
answer
check
is
this
yes,
out. Like, check this out. Like, let's say, you know, you and I spoke a little bit yesterday about like leaving a legacy, right? So let's say we will die, even though we don't really even know that, right? Are we gonna die or not, right? Because like Ray Kurzweil was talking about, like immortality will be achieved by 2029, which is just around the corner, really. 10 years from now, we're still going to be like children, basically young as young as drops of water. And so, you know, 2029, you'll have your immortality. And then what? You know, are you really going to choose to live forever? And what form are you going to live forever in? But here's the question to you. What is the, like, can you write down what is your ultimate legacy that you would want to leave if you were to die? And the brackets to that is, let's say, for example, somebody that I look a lot, and it's like a rare person I look up to typically, but it's someone like Nikola Tesla, right, who gave us electricity, light bulb, blah 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 blah, the motors, all these kind of big discoveries, remote controls and remote transfer of electricity. He was doing, you know, 100 years ago, was doing wireless electricity, and so on and so forth. So those are kind of people I look up to. So his legacy is huge. Even like today, we still don't recognize how valuable his inventions and discoveries were. So like, but you know, okay, he died, you know, miserable man because everyone hated him and they thought he was an egotistical bastard, blah blah blah. That's kind of separate. But like, what would you be happy with your legacy to be if and when you die, and why would you be happy with that?
That's an interesting question. Firstly, though, Ray Kurzweil, he I call bullshit on him quite a lot because he's actually only got 22.5% accuracy in his predictions. You could fucking guess better than 22.5%. So that's pretty poor on his part. The guy, we'll talk about him another time. But in terms of legacy, that's interesting. And I think it's, again, this kind of intrinsically true path that you believe was the most right for all of us in the truest sense, the most uncorrupted, uninfluenced sense. I think legacy is, it's not leaving stuff, is it? It's leaving who you were. The most amount of people who saw a different way, the amount of lives you changed or improved because of who you were and what you represented. That, I feel, is it. I mean, that's what I would leave behind. I don't need some fucking statue. I don't need to leave some massive house. I don't need to leave even a business behind, because everything would be disassembled over time anyway and changed. So it's just a set of values that I spent my life defining and making sure were the purest and most sustainable set of values that most could live by as a template that would work, that would lead you to happiness, that would lead you somewhere better than you were. That to me is what I would leave behind.
But again, that goes back to the question of, how do you know that what you leave for people as set of values, principles, frameworks, blah blah blah, how do you know that those frameworks and principles will lead them to a better tomorrow when we just assess that I don't even know if the trains are going to run tomorrow, let alone anything else.
Well, we know what we are today, and we know what we were yesterday. You can make some calculation of what we need to be tomorrow. We need to be we need to be a lot better in nature, in our mentalities, in our day-to-day life. You know, it is a tricky question, that, but that you can make some basic forecast of this isn't sustainable, this will run as a ground, this way won't do just yet. So it's the case of, this is kind of at the moment the most out of what's the available options. This is probably the best route in order for us to continue as we are similarly for a little longer.
Just to give you a couple of examples, right, in just most recent history, right? Like today, the humanity has never been more advanced in terms of its predictive analytics and ability to predict the outcomes of things, right? Google is building like Google Now, and it was like in Foursquare. If you ask Foursquare, they say, we know to 95% accuracy where your next check-in is going to be. Reason being, because this is kind of like a, kind of a little sales pitch, because people are mostly at home, at work, or in their favorite cafe, right? So they know that you're going to be checking into one of those three places. So 95% accuracy there. But in most recent history, we had a misprediction of Brexit vote, and we had a misprediction of Trump vote, right?
I know.
And so
I totally knew that was gonna happen.
So how the hell can we predict what is going to happen in 10, 20 years from now, when we can't even predict, based on current people's opinions, which president or major sort of electoral decision will happen based on actually polling and asking people in real time?
Well, so two things. Firstly, in sense of technology and its predictions and how it knows all this stuff, big data, a lot of that is horse shit, worthless horse shit. I have a lot of firms who get all excited to me saying, we know this, we know that. And it's like, really? So why the fuck are you ringing me then? Because you obviously know it all, but you don't. You can make calculations, and you can predict very, very basic human behaviors based on the Bayesian inference. Any fucking idiot can do that. It's like, if I see you 3 times in a row eating lunch in Nando's, yeah, consecutive days, guess what? You're probably going to be there the following day. You know, I don't. Wow, that's really not impressive, is it? So where we've got things like that, you know, there's a lot of hopes hung up on that. Like, all of a sudden we know everything. Like, most of all this data is only of use and only even being harvested to sell you products. It's not like, oh, we're going to use this for some like really important project. It's to sell you a fucking advert, to flag something in your face and go, oh, do you want to buy this piece of shit? But like, no one's interested. So it's that big data stuff is so overhyped. It's unbelievable. In fact, everything that you need to know and you need to quantify can't be. And this is one of the things that I'm in my element with in terms of being a prognosticator, because again, you're saying that generally speaking, everyone's predictions are wrong, and they have been. Well, as I said, I wasn't wrong, and let me tell you why I wasn't, because I know the world better than mostly everyone. And that sounds arrogant, but it isn't. That's why people hire me. That's why I'm an asset to people, because I know shit that other people don't. Again, it comes from an intellectual capacity. So where everyone else is making these very poor judgments, if you ask Ginny, she'll tell you that everything I've told her, every prediction I've made since I've known her, has always been true. 100% accuracy I've got on that. And that is because I know the world I'm in. So again, it's this whole issue of raising intellectual caliber as a blanket thing. That's when you start. I don't think we can solve any problems yet unless we're solving the problems of education. We have to broaden the spectrum. We need more people closing the gap towards where we are, And then we can start talking about what tomorrow will look like. Then we can start talking about what we want it to look like, because that's the most important part. Not where it ends up, not where just by default it ends up, but where we actually specifically have says, we would like this, we would like this, we would like this, because that's what we used to do. We used to do that. Not anymore. Now it's, you know, we have the democratic process, and then we have this other process, the free market process, which is completely unregulated. There is no one calling the shots on that. Oh, I'm building artificial intelligence. Okay, we'll let you know if we want that. Oh, okay. Okay, sure, you just make whatever you want and we'll pick up the fucking pieces from that. No, 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 no. So, yeah, when everybody else closes the gap and everyone comes into this same zone of being very smart and knowing what they should know for the world they're in, because most people haven't even left their own fucking town. They've still got the same friends, still listening to their mum and dad who can't even work a mobile phone in the world they're in now. That's great. That's great stuff. You're so smart. You know, the people who are brainwashed by everything they believe they should know, when actually they should know a fuckload more than that. So again, it's this whole intelligence base, isn't it? The plane of intelligence, which is something that I've detailed before and tried to describe. What does intelligence actually mean? It's a set of reference points. Some will be broad, some will be shorter, and it's the pieces in between that will create a picture for you. And obviously, by having that broader plane, you will be more intelligent. I'll show you what I've written about it at some other time. But yeah, it's this thing where you've got so many of us, maybe even 80% of us, because we'll follow the 80-20 rule on this, yeah, that 80% of the whole world's population aren't even nearly as intelligent as that other small proportion. Not even nearly. And we know, and we can tell that by so many different markers. So yeah, you know, everyone's after this parity. Everyone wants this equality. Well, if you want equality, can you please, number one, go and get as smart as everyone else? When you're as smart as everyone else, you'll stop even asking for equality, because you'll be like, oh yeah, we don't need that. We don't need to be equal. You need to be as smart as you can possibly be. You need to be as strong, as quick as you can possibly be. That is human priorities. But no, everyone, you know, because we've got this democratic process, that is a big issue. The fact that we're all looking to someone else. We're sitting there as bystanders. It's like a big theatre performance. Everybody turns up and sits there in the crowd, making noise, going, oh no, I don't like that. Oh, let's talk about that. Oh, I like that. I like the sound. It's all fucking the sound of other people, which again is this thing where you've got leaders and followers. Most people are followers. They need constant direction. They need constant influence. And without it, they are just sitting there, sitting ducks, waiting to be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why to do it. So we have
All right.
Yeah.
So let's start slowly wrapping up, because we're reaching the top of the hour.
We are. I have to get the train.
Oh my gosh, already.
Yeah. So like we've said a lot. We've kind of said a lot of words, but I'm not sure if we've said anything of meaning. So Dee, please enlighten us now in your sort of initial wrap up. And this is like a 1 to 2 minute maximum wrap up on this subject matter.
So I wrote a couple of things down, and I was like checking it onto Trello. So for me, you know, you were asking like, what's the whole point of this? And I know that you and I, Jason, have had a lot of conversations in regards to this. I even remember last year, like one of our first distinct conversations, and it was like, well, what's the point of all of this? And I was like, well, it's for all of us. I personally feel that the point of life is for us to connect with as many humans as possible, right? And so, but now that's really evolved and shifted. And so the way that I see it is that the point of life is life itself, right? So it's, the point is to live with how you as a person know what's real. And of course, what appears a reality may not really be how we perceive it, but that's another different story. So And just to piggyback off of what it was that you're saying is that, yeah, the fact is that we don't know what's around the corner, right? We don't know what happens when we die, or even the true extent of the control of what we have on our lives. But what we do know is that we have an awareness of being here right now at this very present moment. So if we take a lot more of these moments to stop and look what's around us, there's an awareness of looking through a person's eyes, looking through a person's soul, a physical being, a personality, this beautiful individual. So, not spending time on your life believing, because happiness, the true happiness, is in the knowing, right? And I know that's something that Chris had said, it's just in that knowing. So there's really nothing to essentially hope for in the future, but just to embrace this very second, this very moment right now. And so that's the whole point of it, right? So you are the point of it, I'm the point of it, along with every other living, breathing thing on this planet. So when we start living with what is real right now, the point of life falls into place. So it has that context, it has that substance, and it has that meaning. So I think once that is understood, that's really the profound shift of consciousness. And so, that's the legacy, if you will, if that even really exists, for me, is just the point of life is just life itself. And I'll just end off on that note. That was under 2 minutes.
All right, Chris, your wrap up. Try and see something like punchy, meaningful, like a takeaway. 1 minute.
Well, do you want me to tell a joke or something?
That might like resonate the most. Who knows?
Well, do you know what? I shouldn't have said that because I can't really think of. You know what? When everyone says, "Do you know any jokes?" I always have to Google them. You know, when you just like come across jokes and you're like, "That's funny. I'll remember that one," and then you just completely fucking forget them. Then you're quickly on Google, like, "Oh yeah, that's funny. I'll pretend I knew that one for ages." So yeah, life itself. It's what's the purpose? Well, there isn't really one, is there? Other than everything falls within the spectrum of light. The more different things in life that are made, the different life forms, it is just a surety. It is guaranteed that light, that energy continues moving forward in time. So every different species, every different thing that we imagine is in galaxies, universes, elsewhere, is some form of light moving forward for some reason, unbeknownst to us, because we have the inability to understand it. And by having different types of life form, having its own individual way of evolving, it means that as different ones die off, the other ones will succeed. And so that continues, this whole continuum of light moving forward in time, uninterrupted. We're cogs of a bigger machine. That's what I think.
So okay. Jason, your final thoughts, your wrap up,
the bigger machine. So I'm just looking through my window and seeing a bunch of trees and birds flying from one tree to another and so on. And I'm just thinking about ecosystem, right? And within all this, there are first principles of everything, and things just really stack up and build very perfectly on top of each other. Each tree, each bird has a purpose to it. Everything locks together in a perfect ecosystem of coexistence. Nothing is really battling with each other, right, to coexist. And this is, I think, some of the takeaways we can take from nature, which has existed and survived for millions of years, unlike us, who can't really seem to survive the little dip in the market as soon as it happens. So the takeaway for me as a designer of all sorts of things is that we got to work with the first principles and build upon proven laws and well-observed laws of universe and nature, maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and psychology. Increasingly, we build on those core well-grounded laws that are well-observed and proven and experimented with, but we have a long-term picture of where we want to head, knowing that that long-term picture may well change, and we have to be responsibility, which is responsibility to everything that keeps changing and shaping in front of us. So in design, taking things from atomically from the ground up with first principles, with an aim towards a long-term vision that is beneficial towards all of us, usually yields results that are way better than anything else that people sort of attempt and in a sort of ad hoc fashion. So marrying the long-term vision and purpose to the best of our ability to kind of see and outline it and picture it, envision it, with first principles approach, which is the most optimized and the most structured and grounded way of thinking, results that will give us the best possibility for future evolution and evolvement into whatever the hell next version of ourselves is. That's my wrap up.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's
Love it.
good. It's making sure we set the ground right for what can happen next, yeah, rather than forcing
Exactly.
something. Just set the ground right for now, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
foundations,
exactly.
and those foundations that give us the best possibility to grow the future ecosystem on those solid foundations, which kind of have to be it for the beautiful ecosystem to grow on top of that. And yes, some things may die off and so on, but that's natural process.
And on that note, what an amazing show this was this Saturday. Thank you, Chris, so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Pure Purpose is going to be on every single Saturday mornings, and you can follow us on Facebook over at Conscious Hub, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys. Cheers. All the best.
Ciao.
Bye.